Oh, man.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Rally Podcast. I'm Mike White here with Logan Cornelius and Sean Boyer. Of course, the title for this one, as a producer and a guest, we already put in the one where we talk about the rules, because as many and almost everyone is aware, the 2021 rules were announced a couple weeks ago now. I'd say about 10 days ago. So we're going to give you our takes, I guess, go over them real quickly. Logan actually played a tournament with these rules and go through a couple of scenarios, who we thinks it helps. We'll see how much time we got, because I'm sure we could talk about this for a long time. But anyway, thanks for listening. And I think to get into it, I'm going to just share, I feel like the main rules that we will be talking about are these three, which is the serving line was moved from 6 feet from the set to 7, except you are now allowed to lean over the line. So there's no, invisible cylinder that you can't lean into. The second is deemed the soft touch rule, which is definitely pulled from volleyball, that I had no idea. And to me, it kind of doesn't really make sense. It doesn't make sense, the word soft touch, but that's a whole separate thing. But the soft touch rule, where if you get a deflection or a block within the serving circle, you can now set it again. That will count as your second hit. You cannot spike it right onto the net. It has to be a set to your partner. And then the third, and the probably most controversial or most discussed, is the no hit zone, which is a 1.5 foot line around the set, in which you have to be planted with 2 feet outside while you hit, or I don't know, I'm not doing well with saying. You can't hit from inside that circle. If you hit, you got to hit after you're established outside. Yes, your feet. You can dive in, you can lean in, but your feet have to be outside. If you have a different momentum, say you're jumping over the net, you got to land outside. You have to remain outside that barrier. I'd recommend watching How to Roundnet's video on these rule changes. It's pretty good, and it goes through. And also Y Spikes has a good one too. So check out both of those on YouTube for a better explanation than what I have right here. So anyway, I think first thing, let's go into quick takes on these rules.
I love them. I'm a big fan of the rules. I don't think the 7 foot with the lean really changes much. It certainly doesn't really change much for me, someone who's not really a serve ball player. But it gives me a lot more confidence on my lefty serve, because I don't have to worry about going over. But I think overall, 7 foot's good. No hit zone, I love. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it makes hitting, you have to think more with hitting. Before, without the no hit zone, hitting is just kind of like, you have to think of how to do a cool shot, because it doesn't really matter. You're going to put it away for the most part. As long as it's like a 4 out of 10 set, 3 out of 10 set, anything less than 3, you probably can't put away, but even a bad set you can put away. With this, setting has to be more refined. You have to be a lot more thoughtful when hitting. You have to think about it. You can't just swing away, and positioning yourself, positioning your body. And I think just in general, positioning is a lot more important. So it's a lot more of a mental game for hitting, which I found a lot of fun when I played with. And it has a lot of unique approaches to how you hit. So I'm a big fan of it. And then the soft touch, I don't know. I don't really have any issue with it. It's hard to really remember it right now. So once I'm more used to it, I think I'll have more of an opinion. I just don't ever think about it to even do it. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think at a broad level, I like the rule changes. I think it's just a way to keep experimenting with things, keep things fresh, try and find that right direction that we're on. For the serving, I think Logan's right. I don't think it'll change too much in the actual abilities players have, but it will reduce a ton of gray area around whether or not they cross the plane when we used to play at the six foot line. So anything that removes gray area, I'm a fan of.
As far as my take, if you want a dissenting opinion, you're going to not get that here, because I'm also a fan. I am very excited to see how these plan out. Obviously, The serving line will remove a lot of gray area, which I've observed many games. And it's very interesting because there are so many teams that don't even come close. Like when I observed CS and Boisterous in Nashville or CS in Hilltop at Summer Spike, none of those 6 players are going anywhere near reaching over the line. But I'll observe other games and it happens every once in a while. And it's so hard to tell. It really is. Like you try your best, but it's so quick and it's very hard while trying to watch other things. I remember some cases where they were like, I forget what the call was, but they wanted me to, like, his foot moved. And I was like, I was watching toss. You know, you can't watch all those things. So I'm very excited. I also think it is a slight nerf to serving. I think you have some more freedom with the lean, but given that most people probably aren't leaning a foot, that at least gives another foot's length ability to react. You know, if they're hitting from 6'6" for 6 feet, not much, but a little more time to react to serves, which should help receivers. As far as the soft touch, I think same thing. I think people aren't used to it, and it'll take some time. But I think it's great because similar to the consecutive touch rule, it will extend rallies and extend points. Really, that would likely be over, and I don't think they're unrewarded. I don't think it's a unintuitive thing to think I got a good touch, my partner's somewhere else. It'll just open things up. And then lastly, the no hit zone, same thing. I think the big focus is that it's going to make defense easy. I think that is very incorrect. I think it's going to make defense easier, from very, 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 very challenging to very, very challenging. You know, in some cases, if there's bad sets, like you're saying, it's not challenging. But I think at the top level, it still will be. I think I'm excited to see how the players adapt their hitting and their footwork. Because, you know, even if we've seen the stats with the no hit zone, it's still a majority, you know, put away game. And I'm really excited to see
strong, not just majority, strong
yes,
majority.
Strong majority. I'm excited to see how the meta develops with the offenses getting better, because people are very not skilled at this off the net type of hitting. And then the defense isn't as ready for it either, but they're going to get there. So I'm excited to see how it goes. I think it'll be truthfully a similar game, but adding a new few layers to it that will expand the meta a little bit.
Well, I think you're exactly right too on the meta side of things, because if we think about what Roundnet's been up until this point, the defensive teams, 2 players have to cover 360 degrees. So they're essentially cutting that in half. In certain plays, when a set is right over the net, you got to cover every angle. With the no hit zone, we're now taking some number of degrees out of that equation, and these 2 players will have to fill less space and have more opportunity to be in the right spot at the right time and make a play. So it's like very cut and dry. That's what I get out of it. And I think it's hard to really see or know, even in these initial tournaments, how it's going to play out. But once teams adapt and be like, okay, so you don't have to rotate all the way around and cover this side, because we know they won't have that angle. So we can both adjust and be in this space or force a hit here. And that's going to be very interesting as that develops and defensive strategy sort of catches up with what's going on.
And I think one thing I've seen is like people talking, oh, there's less athleticism. I think as it develops and like these strategies form, because I think with a new area where you can't be in, you have to be strategic about avoiding it, which is going to add strategy and how to play defense against that. I think it's going to add a lot of athleticism and some really cool plays that we just haven't thought of. I mean, and like it's a whole new dynamic where, like, you know, with serving, you cut serve, reverse cut, flango, all kinds of different things developed. Like, I think there's going to be some cool things that develop from the no hit zone and how people play defense and read hitters and adjust that we haven't really thought about yet, but it's going to add some cool dynamics to the game.
I've already seen some cool stuff, you know, strategy. I think someone posted line up in the circle and then jump out and hit. I know a lot of people were talking about hitting over the net, because I know a lot of people love that push shot where then they jump over the net. And I think you're right that there's going to be a lot of little things developing. And I think footwork is going to be so important, and it already is in Roundnet. But I think even more so, trying to navigate that barrier.
And that's what I found. I was diving a lot more to hit, and honestly, like hitting felt a lot more athletic once I got going because I had to position myself and like got a lot more just like diving flick shots that like felt really cool. Like finding where to position yourself and dive around it, and just finding the way to hit and then like follow through and kind of like run around the net to use that momentum. So that was a lot of fun, and I'm excited to see how it develops. And I will say I was so much more sore after the tournament, just because I was on the ground a lot more and diving a lot more and like using my shoulders for hitting a lot more. And I was like, man, I don't know if it's just because I'm getting old or just because of this, but like I felt I was sore several days after, and then I tried to play some more, like pick up like 3 or 4 days afterward, and I was just like, man, I am worth nothing right now. I was so sore.
Yeah, I'm as you talked about hitting and also setting. A lot of people think setting is going to be very important. I'm really excited to see if there becomes like it's usually common knowledge that setting to the middle of the net, you have all the options, right? I really wonder if there will be a new place like, no, this is the ideal place to set it. You want to have almost all the options or something like that, because a lot of people can't reach into the middle of the net, you know? So I'm excited to see about that. It brings me back because I remember thinking like a long time ago, there was some story where someone just couldn't understand why we were setting to the middle of the net. And they're like, hit it to me. And I was like, no. It was the whole thing. But I'm excited to see that. I want to touch quickly, right? So these rules are the SARA rules, and some groups are going to be using them for their independent tournaments. But essentially, these will be used for the SRA Tour and those events and those sanctioned events. However, the IRF and USA Roundnet, although they haven't formed rules yet, you know, they do not have to abide by these rules. They may not. You know, maybe the case that Worlds in 2021 is not using these rules, SRA rules, but that's kind of the difference here is the SRA is really no longer the governing body of the sport, just this specific tour series. And so, you know, you won't be seeing this at every tournament you go to, but you will be seeing it at Spikeball branded events.
And QuickNet Worlds has been postponed for 2021. So
yes,
2022. Possibly.
Oh, 2022. I forgot what year it was, truthfully.
Yeah, it's true. It's all the years are blending together now, not just the days.
Oh, 2022. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
That'll be interesting to see, just like, because I know some tours haven't been using them or adjusting them and different. And so it'll be interesting to see if ones that aren't using it, how the skill of their players develops, or if there's a quick adaptation and say, hey, you know, everyone loves this and they pick it up. And even like that goes for globally as well as like other groups are still developing and seeing like, okay, if this is the answer is 1 year of not playing with no hit zone, will that dramatically affect them, or what it'll look like when they do start playing no hit zone? It's something it may not be a big deal at all. It may have no effect, but it'll be interesting to see. I think it may at first draw a different type of player, but I think like Sean said, and it's going to end up being mostly the same game once everyone adapts to it.
I think what'll be interesting is say the SRA for the next 2 years does these rules, and then Worlds is the 2020 rules, right? There will be some time, I think, to get back to hitting over the net. I think that will be picked up pretty quickly. But they will have added this new incredible off the net hitting. I think there will be some adjustment period, but once the adjustment is there, it's going to be hard to manage 2 games because Worlds will be during the SRA season, but you know, they will have those new skills. I think a harder thing to wire will be defense, because having to adjust to these completely different types of hits close to the net, I think will also be a little harder conceptually to adjust to. I think it's definitely possible, but it may be a little tough.
I have a feeling players will be able to adjust however they need. I mean, they've played so much Roundnet as is that it's like ingrained in them. But the harder part will just be learning the new styles and metas at these tournaments. I remember years ago fantasizing about like at some point we'll have events where each division could potentially have a different like size of, I don't want to say boundary, but like we'll say no hit zone. So you could play in the 1.5 no hit zone, you could play in the 3 foot hit zone, you could play in the 6 foot hit zone. And each of those divisions sort of caters to a slightly different skill set or type of player. But there's enough people out there and enough different sort of styles or metas that it would work. And I don't view it as like we need one clear cut path to figure out because we don't know what that path is. So let's, keep playing around with what we got and having fun with it as we go. But the more rallies we see, the better. And kind of like what we're talking about, I think the more athletic looking plays is both fun and fun to watch.
Yeah. Going off of that, right, we talked about how we think the meta will develop skills on setting and hitting. So I kind of want to talk about were there specific players or teams or just types of archetypes that you think will either do better with these 2021 rules or worse. The first take I wanted to talk about is I think the real thing is that people can continue to do the serving meta. I think that's totally a still reasonable way and viable way to win games. I think you can still ace people and it will still do that. And your hitting has to be solid, but you can still do it. I think that some teams can also go the way of not going for aces and playing defense. And that's also a viable way to win. My big takeaway is though, I think the top teams will still be serving threats. They will be defensive threats and they'll be great hitters. I don't think in the top 5, we'll have that's like a serving team, or maybe they're better at serving than they're at defense. But I think at the top, everyone's still going to be good at everything. I think where we'll see kind of the divisions is going to be in the 5 through 25 and the 5 through 50 or 6 through 50.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you said it well there. I don't have any disagreements. I think, yeah, I don't know how it's going to develop with teams. It will shake things up. I think it will help established teams more. Teams that were good will probably have more of a hold on a top spot than they would have had the no hit zone in 7 foot not happened. But I think ultimately long term, it's going to breed a lot more developed players because people have to get good at what they are. And it'll be interesting to see how people play like the 2 serves, if people are going to just try to get that second one on, or if they're still going to go for the ace ball.
Another really interesting thing too has been, and people have talked about it on the SRA Facebook page, but will this now favor taller people or certain body types more? And I think a team to watch, not that we weren't going to already be watching them already, but it's Chiswick Showalter, because PJ obviously has a very, very large wingspan. Tyler not as big, but how will each of them as players adapt? Will teams like that now try and make sure PJ is the one hitting because he will have slightly more angle than Tyler, although Tyler's a very good hitter in the rules as they were. So it's going to be, it's going to be cool to see how certain players make decisions based on sort of what they're working with.
Yeah, that's something I was thinking about as well. It's like, if you extrapolate this over, like you take the 2, like let's say it continues on with no hit zone, continues on with hit zone. The reality where it continues on with the no hit zone, I think the average height of the player in, we'll say 10, 20 years would probably be a good amount shorter than with the no hit zone. I think ultimately as it develops, it'll breed a taller player, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think basketball is a lot of fun because people are really tall and like taller hitters. And so it'll be interesting to see how it develops and as the sport grows. But I think it certainly does favor taller players, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing either.
Oh, and it does, and just because it favors doesn't mean it's not possible to succeed as a not tall player.
Sure.
Well, I think that there's definitely there's a threshold on that too, or a balance, because you still want to be able to get around quickly and be agile and all that comes with that. So, and maybe we start seeing these split teams, like one person who can run down all the balls and be really quick and fast, and one person who has the reach to get the hits. And
3v3 no hit zone. Sounds like that's the future.
we're slowly working our way there, Logan.
So a couple of things I thought about there. One is that when you're thinking about CS, truthfully, I don't think of them as the most ambidextrous hitters. And I think being ambidextrous is going to be huge with the no hit zone. When you have worse sets, you really have a lot less to work with. And I think being ambidextrous is going to be very important. So I really wonder how that will affect their game. If they're incredible at backhands and flick shots. And I wonder if that's something that those players would want to develop in the future. Again, we're continuing to assume that they're coming back and playing. But right, I think that's the case with a lot of players that are very dominant on their right hand and their flicks, or lefty if they're lefty, and seeing if they'll develop that left hand.
Yeah, but hear me out here. I would almost argue that you don't need to be as ambidextrous, because that was a huge strength when you could tower over the net and wait for this set coming down the middle and decide based reading the defense in the last second pick away. And so having a left hand there would really help. But for this, the setters now, instead of making a split second decision when the ball's coming into your hand and you're deciding where you want to put it, you're going to have to kind of already know where you're going with it and which hand your teammate wants it at, because the hitter won't be able to decide or have many options or outs once that ball's coming at them. So I think the sets are just going to have to be way more precise on where they think their partner has the best shot. And it's not going to come down so much to the hitter deciding as much as the setter's placement. Unless, I bet, with that said, Logan might both speak together because you just played in it. Do sets over the net still work and you just have to dive and choose?
Yeah, they can. I think it depends. One, it depends how far away you're coming from to the ball. Because obviously that leaves less time, and it just depends, I think, how tall the player is as well. You can still have sets that are slightly over the net. And if you're running beside the net, and your momentum is taking you forward beside the net, you can still kind of have a choice of where to hit it. And there's still some, if it's over the net and you're in the right spot, you can still lean and get a flick and have options. As long as you have control of your momentum. It's obviously not as easy as before. But while I was playing, I didn't like it over the middle of the net as I did without the no hit zone. But I still don't want it off the net as much. For me, I think the ideal shot was a little bit in front of me where I kind of had to launch myself at the ball, and then I could choose from there, and I had options. So it's more so a little bit off center, but still over the net with that. So it does change the ideal spot a little bit. And again, if you're taller, it probably doesn't really change much being over the net because you can still reach, but that's kind of how I felt about it.
True.
Yeah, I think it really depends on where most sets go, right? If how fast they are. I think of if sets are within 6 inches of the net and you can reach in, you can do so much. And you can, like Sean said, you can use just that right hand. I think if maybe that's, I think probably in most cases that will be it. I just wonder, aiming for over the net is not the strategy, then there may be cases where people get a little bit locked into the shot they have to take. And I think, and that's more where I'm thinking that stuff will come in, not your everyday hit, but on those bailout hits, But
that is one thing I realized too with it. It was being a setter. Right now, you just without the no hit zone, you set it over the net. You don't have to think about where you're hitting it. But with no hit zone, you actually have to survey the land a little bit more and be smart. And there'd be some sets where where I put it, I knew I was giving it. I played with Marcus Dakuda, who's California guy, Northern California. But there'd be some sets I gave to him. And I knew it would be a little off the net. I knew we was just going to have to boom it. And I knew immediately when I gave that set where I needed to go on defense, because it was going to be a bomb shot. They were probably going to get it off, but they would have had to run far enough to where when they got back on the net, should be able to cover it and get the return. So it's basically okay, let's reset, let's give them a chance, and then so when we get the ball, we can put it away. So that was an interesting type of thing as well, where like when a set came off, I knew kind of what I needed to do for when they got it back on, assuming they did.
Hey, Sean, so because I know you and Skylar did this a lot back in the day, do you think we'll see a resurgence of the quick set where you just kind of pelted at your partner for like a quick hit?
I mean, it could work well, just trying to now using that as a way to catch the defense off guard, because you're not going to get the perfect shot that you could in the past. So I would love for that to come back.
I remember I used to do that so much. I spent a whole tournament. At the time I thought it was like the coolest thing. And there's a whole highlight reel where I'm just freaking like pelting it and making my partner take the shot, which was like not even the right shot. And looking back, it's like so bad. It's like just set the ball. Just
It's
set
very,
the
very
ball.
situational.
Yeah, it's so funny. But all right, I think we're almost out of time here.
I'm gonna make a hot take.
All right.
I think after we get a little more used to the no hit zone, we're gonna realize the no hit zone needs to be bigger.
I'm not against that. I don't. That's not that hot to me.
For some, I think it would be scalding hot.
Well, yes. For some, yes. That's all I'll say. Yes.
My neutral take is it depends on the outcome we want. You know, I think will this change the game from 2% rallies to 5? Maybe. Did we want 10? Yeah, maybe you could send it to the 3. I think the difference is for me, it's less about I guess I'm a little, when I think about it, I think about the maneuvering around the net. But the truth is, you only have to hit it from out there. So that's a completely different thing, you know? And you could be right.
Yeah, I mean, and we can see how it couples with potential possible like equipment changes and how it all works together. And I think there's a lot of good pieces, and it's just figuring out how to put them all together. Until everyone realizes that 3v3 is the answer, and until then, I'm just waiting for everyone to get on board.
Wow. Yeah. I don't know. My mind's just spinning, trying to think about an even bigger no hit zone. If it was 3, that is even more like volleyball, you know?
Then it's a lot of endurance and just like not making mistakes and having strong setting.
So I think the thing is, I feel so not averse is the wrong way to say, is like, how often do I just like hit from 3 feet away from the net, right? Not often. So the idea that like, that's the game, I'm sure it would be totally fine once you develop those skills. But right now, those skills are not very sharp. So
Well,
I
you've
think
been conditioned for years to not take that shot.
My reaction, like many has been, is that it's going to feel awkward and it's going to feel bad. And that's not inherently a bad thing. It's okay if it feels awkward for a little bit. Yeah. I
do think that rather than a bigger no hit zone, the answer will be a combination of multiple things. We could get to a bigger hit zone, but I think it will be supplementary to other things as well. So
Sean didn't say we're going to get to a no hit zone. He's saying we should have, or we should.
I think we're going to realize. I think we'll play around with it. We'll see.
That's fair. Only time will tell.
All right, and that just made so many people even more upset about the no hit zone.
Comment below how big you think the no hit zone is gonna.
I heard it's gonna be 10 foot. I heard it'll be 10 foot by the time nationals come.
Better start practicing those.
I heard the no hit zone is just going to be the same distance as the serving line, so you only have to draw one line.
Oh, efficient.
Very efficient. All right, cool. Thank you, Logan and Sean, for joining and chatting. I'm sure we could chat much more about this. I still had a bunch of things that I wanted to say about this kind of stuff. I'm just really excited speculating about how the meta will develop and who will do well and who won't. And I'm just really excited to see how things happen this year. But anyway, thank you to everyone that is listening or watching this. We appreciate it. Sean said comments how big the no hit zone should be. But seriously, comment top. I would like you to comment topics you want us to talk about if you have, because it's always fun. And sometimes they get us really going like this. Like I feel like we could just talk for hours on this, and maybe we have, and maybe we
that's
will
unique
continue.
because most people can't talk about the rules very much, you know. So
Yeah,
no
it's
one's
like
really
no one really likes to talk about it. No one
Maybe
has
we'll do
any
a
ideas.
part
or
2
takes.
next week or something.
Yeah, and then a part 3. The season starts.
Yeah.
Essentially, the whole season is going to be just a rules discussion.
It's actually becoming the rules podcast. So we just
Exactly. But anyway, thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time. Peace.
smash that like button.
Smash it.